Hello, beautiful people. Welcome to another edition of Meditations and Transformations. I'm going to give this video a very straightforward title. I'm going to call it, What is Futures Thinking? So if you're in the field of futures thinking or foresight or futurism, whatever you might call it, then you might be surprised by the definition that I'm going to give on this video, but I hope you're inspired by it. If you're someone who isn't in the field proper of futures thinking and foresight as a practice, but you've heard about this thing, futures thinking or foresight, and you're like, oh, this is interesting. Somebody making a video about the definition of what futures thinking is. I assure you that this is not the definition that you would find on Wikipedia or by Googling foresight or futures thinking. This is going to be something a little bit different. And what I believe over decades of doing this work, that futures thinking actually is, needs to be, and manifests as when we think about it as a biological, as a psychological, as a social, relational, connected, and as a sacred. What do I mean by that word sacred? I mean awe-inducing, wonder-inducing, enchantment-inducing of the cosmos of life itself. Sacred is a biological, psychological, social, sacred dynamic of all living things. So I've been very inspired this week to make this video. I've tried several times and I've not been able to do it, but tonight is the night, and it's the perfect night because I've read a couple articles recently that have really helped me to hone in on this message that I get jazzed about. And that is helping people to understand futures thinking and futures consciousness as opposed to foresight and using trends to extrapolate the system that we're already in. So a moment ago, I just said that futures thinking is a biological, psychological, social, and sacred dynamic of all living things. That is very different from taking trends that are born out of the system we're in and using them to sort of predict or extrapolate forward what might unfold. When we think about relationality as being the core of futures consciousness, and I'm going to get to that in just a moment. Why is that? But if we think about relationality, human to human, human to ancestors, I'll point them forward as well. They're not just back, our ancestors are forward. We're ancestors of those yet to come as well. So 3 ancestors, the past, the present, the future, of kin, of all living things, plants and animals, of the planet itself as a living entity, as the cosmos unfolding as a living entity and the fundamental development of consciousness throughout the cosmos. We could go on with that. This is a whole nother video. But when we think about that relationality, we're not separate from one another. We are one of collective consciousness. This is a very different way of tapping into not trends and extrapolation, but of imaginal anticipation for alternative realities. I want to hang on that, and I want to get back to it again in just a second, but I want to hang on it. I wanted to segue, though, just by saying that the other day I wrote a post, and Phoebe Tickell, she commented on the post. It was really funny because it was a post similar to what I'm giving you on this video tonight. And a lot of people might know Phoebe. She speaks around the world at conferences, largely in Europe, but in the United States as well, and probably South America. I don't know. I just know that she's internationally famous. And she has created an organization in the past several years called Moral Imaginations. And so she has listed herself as being a futurist and a futures thinker, and she still says that from time to time. She uses that when it's appropriate. I think that's powerful. But she wrote on the post just 3 words, and one of them wasn't even a word, it was an emoji. And it said, futures thinking, ? And then the emoji was hilarious. It was that green face that's going, and throwing up. You might be surprised to hear that. But more and more people today are starting to realize, or are increasingly realizing, and it's not new. It's not new. There's been articles long ago on the transitions into this, but more people are realizing today that futures thinking as a tool to analyze abstractions and objects and then extrapolate them forward into what they might become, those very trends and analysis being born out of the system that we're in does not get us to alternative realities. Because there's a tricky thing about futures, right? Jim Dater said many years ago, the future does not exist. But I really love what my friend Peter Hayward said to me not long ago, very recently. We were having a conversation about the future does not exist, because I have a real problem with that phrase sometimes. I think the future does exist. And maybe in time and space it doesn't exist, but in experience it exists. The poet Rilke, I've said this over and over again. Anybody's watched my videos is like, here he goes with the Rilke again. But if you've never seen it, then it's relevant to this video. The poet Rilke said, the future enters into us in order to transform itself in us before it manifests through us. This is a paraphrase, but it's pretty close. And it is the crux of what Rilke was saying, that the future is not a time or place. That doesn't exist. But what does exist is an experience of the future. It's imaginal anticipation of alternative realities, so that we're not waiting to see, if I extrapolate this trend out 10 years, this is what's going to manifest, and therefore your business needs to start navigating towards this. That's weak foresight. I'm not accusing anybody. I have done plenty of that. I'm not pointing a finger. I'm not saying you practice weak foresight. I practice weak foresight. I'm saying that is weak foresight. We don't have to practice foresight that way. There's a better foresight. It's not trend hunting and extrapolation and analysis. It's not pattern making out of all those trends. It's not stories about what happens if we stay on this trajectory, or what happens if the trends manifest for the betterment. AI takes us into terrible futures. AI liberates humanity for glorious recreation and leisure and passions. Both of those are extrapolation. But futures consciousness says what wants to emerge. What wants to emerge for the health of the entirety, of the relationality, of all of us, what wants to emerge. And so I can assure you, because if I don't say this now, I'm going to forget to say it on this video, that if you want to practice foresight for organizations and for social initiatives and for people and for leadership, which I do, then you're going to be shocked by this, or maybe not, but I think a lot will. You do not have to practice foresight as linear methodologies that are looking for trends and trend booklets and trend reports and extrapolating those out and saying then to your clients, here's how you need to maneuver and what you need to do to leverage and use and harness those trends for the future. That's weak foresight. It is possible to practice transformational futuring instead that doesn't deal with trends that are born out of the system. I like to often call this futuring to the system. We're not futuring to the future. We're not futuring to imagination. We're not futuring to alternative realities. We're just futuring to the system. Because where did those trends come from? They came from the system. Instead, we can future in a way that looks for the cracks in the system, the cracks that show us what's beyond the system and the cracking of the system altogether. So my great friend, and I know that all of you who are watching this video will know, Sohail Inyatella. He's just an amazing individual, and he talks a lot about transformational futuring. He uses CLA for the future of the self, or the CLA of the self, and also of groups. And the other day, he put up a great post that said someone had thought of a CLA, a causal layered analysis of the self, a deep dive into the metaphors of why I have this particular problem, why I'm doing this thing, and what a new metaphor for my life might be that would send me on an alternative path, an alternative reality, an imaginal anticipation, anticipating through imagination, an alternative pathway for myself. Didn't have anything to do with trends. No trends involved. No trends here. And I've done this for organizations around the world. So anyway, he just gave some high level, if you're familiar with causal layered analysis, it's a tool that basically says, look, there is a factual statement at the top. I always do this. This always happens. This problem is always manifesting. This is just a reality that we want to see changed at the top, often called the litany, but it's just those facts at the top, right? And so he said, he showed in the post, the gentleman's litany, going down to like systemically, why is this happening? The worldviews that undergird those systems that's making it happen, or structures, and then the deep metaphor that might explain what I'm carrying around that's causing me to manifest this top level, and what that shift could be in my mind, in my heart, in my soul, that would lead me imaginally into an alternative reality that enters into me an experience that I might manifest out through me, not just waiting 10 years from now, but the future manifests today. That's the thing I was going to say a few minutes ago that I was going to dive back into, is that futures thinking can be tough because we're thinking in this extrapolated, extractive, exploitative, linear, mechanized, siloed, separated kind of way that we do futuring today. The reason we do that is because our system does everything that way. And we've just taken this beautiful thing called futures thinking and futures consciousness, and we've turned it into this analytical, siloed thing that has nothing to do with life. So I wrote a similar thing like Sohail's. And I went from litany through system, through worldviews, through metaphor, and then the shifting metaphor. But my litany was this: we struggle to gain clarity on how the future will unfold. And as a result, we do not know exactly what actions to take in the present to ensure greater economic, political, and technological growth and success. This is the thing we're always dealing with. That question comes straight out of a hegemonic, modern, colonial, capitalistic view. That's what we want to know inside that system. So we have to have a different system if we're going to look at foresight and futures thinking and futures consciousness a different way. So the systems that undergird that might be this statement: we believe that signals, analysis, and extrapolation will help us to better predict unfolding future pathways. And this will illuminate the strategic plans and actions that will be needed to guide us into greater relevance and success. I know the word was predict in there, and if you're not aware, every foresight and futures professional watching this video is saying, Frank, we don't predict. Yes, we're all trying to predict. That's why our trends are being analyzed. That's called prediction. You can mask it if you want to. You can sleight of hand it if you want to. Analyzing trends is an attempt at predicting. Worldview. What undergirds that system? We labor under the guiding narrative of increasingly efficient and productive structures and individuals that scale upwards from maximum output. I'm going to come back to this scale thing in just a moment because it's so powerful. But that's the worldviews that sort of guide us: efficiency, productivity, scaling upwards, maximum output. That's why we're practicing futures the way we do, foresight the way we do. And the deep metaphor, the mythic understanding here, the symbol that undergirds all of this might be: we envision superior knowledge as being produced through the atomized examination of the self-replicating machine. Does this sound familiar? AI and all of this. It's not just AI though. It's a mechanistic view and atomization. If we could just self-replicate this, if I have more knowledge, epistemic uncertainty, I will know. Give me the data, analyze it. We're going to get back to that in just a minute too. Here's the shift that leads us back to the beginning of this video. What is futures thinking? What is futures consciousness? And so that new metaphor might be, instead of we envision superior knowledge as being produced through an atomized examination of a self-replicating machine, instead we embody perception. We embody, the future enters into us. We embody perception through the relational, human, kin, planet, cosmos, relational wisdom of ever-emerging organism, of an ever-emerging organism, of an ever-emerging, not set in stone. You can't point and say, here's the future, there's the future, there it is, run to it. Ever-emerging. We find the future as we walk the path together. The future unfolds as we walk the path together. So having said that, I'm going to end on this amazing article by Eleanor Robins that she wrote just maybe a week or so ago. 2 weeks ago, it looks like. And it's called Reality is a Sculpture, Not a Jigsaw Puzzle. So as I'm saying this, I want you to think about the fact that what is futures thinking? It's a sculpture. It's not a jigsaw puzzle. It's not a puzzle for you to put together. It's not trends being analyzed that then AI will give you the answer if you type in what is the future of X and or that I make a trend report and you will be able to. That is weak futuring, weak foresight. It just is. It is not life-giving, it's not relational, it's not transformative, and it is not imaginal anticipation, anticipating through imagination alternative realities to the system of separation that we're in. So this is what Eleanor Robins had to say. And I'm going to just end by reading this, and then we'll close the video. I was chatting to a new philosopher friend a couple of weeks ago, and we've been talking about writing and the nature of reality. You know, the usual stuff. When he said something that made me shout, yes! He told me that he encourages his students to approach their work and their lives as if they're painting an oil painting, not completing a jigsaw puzzle. Amazing. And then she goes on to say, I've seen a lot of dire articles lately about how AI is affecting the work of college students, how much thinking is being outsourced to ChatGPT, and the effect this seems to be having on attention and engagement and honestly the will to live. Mine at any rate, she says. This analogy of completing a jigsaw puzzle versus turning your life and learning into a sculpture, a relational, connected, collective, cooperative, co-creative sculpture is the most inspiring and succinct argument I've heard against that way of studying. After all, if life is a jigsaw puzzle and we just have to find the answer and piece it together and analyze it and trend it up, then we're just creating someone else's picture. We're working towards someone else's picture. And to whom exactly have we handed the power? That's what that kind of futuring foresight will get you. And that's why when I say, what is futures thinking? That's not what it is. It is not a jigsaw puzzle. It is not trending out, extrapolative, leveraging and harnessing so that we might know how to future to the system and remain relevant. So I'm going to skip down just a bit. And maybe not. Okay, yes, here we go. Then she goes on to say, this isn't a lesson for the students alone who are using AI. That's just an example. If students were over-reliant on AI, that's because our whole culture is effed up. She says the actual word that way. AI itself isn't just a direct and obvious extension, or AI itself is just a direct and obvious extension of a mistaken belief that modern Western culture has been deepening into for the last half century. Then she says something really powerful. I've been talking about this for a long time, the idea of scientism as a religion. And she says the ideology of scientism, which doesn't reflect the intuitive and imaginative practice of science itself, has for at least 500 years been telling us that material reality is a jigsaw puzzle that we solve with our analytical and detached observational skills, foresight. I'm sorry, it hurts me too. And that imagination and creativity are luxuries, nice extras. What a crock of shit. To be human is to create. As a function of being incarnate and sentient, we are at all times created an image, a sculpture out of infinity. So powerful, and I recommend that you go look up Eleanor's article and read the rest of it. That was just the beginning. It's a 25-minute read, but you can listen to her read the article to you on her Substack. It's amazing. That's what futures thinking is. It's not trending, analytical trending, pointing out the trends, what's rising out of the system we're already in. It is imaginal anticipation that has entered into you that causes the transformation to manifest alternative realities, ancestral, kinship, cooperative, relational, awe-inspiring, sacred. And yes, you can practice this for organizations. If you want to ask me how, write me, let me know. I'd be glad to tell you all about it. Even better yet, you can come to the Dragonfly Journey or join us at our next retreat, September of 2026. We're going to announce it pretty soon, and I'll see you there.